welcome to Cult Macabre, a phantasmagoric guide to pop culture's dark side. I'm Richie.
And I'm Lee.
And today we are here to talk about the mental dichotomy of liminal spaces. This internet phenomenon has taken everything by storm since 2019, but really picked up during the COVID-19 pandemic during 2020 through 2021. And if a lot of you out there are not very familiar with what liminal spaces entail, liminal spaces are technically the uncertain transitions between where you've been and where you're going, physically, emotionally, or metaphorically. To be in a liminal space means to be on the precipice of something new, but not quite there.
It means a threshold, a between space. This can mean something metaphorical, emotional, physical. Examples of some between spaces would be airports, hotels, corridors, staircases, anything like this. Nostalgic places are also extremely popular when it comes to liminal space photography.
And what you were saying a while ago about it meaning threshold, it comes from the Latin word limen, which literally means threshold. And a lot of the photography pieces that we do think about are, like you said, nostalgic places, abandoned shopping malls and grocery stores kind of being, a couple of the big things. Or you brought up when we were just talking just off air about Discovery Zone, play places and things like that.
Yes, Discovery Zone was really big when I was a kid in the 90s. And in my area, that was the place to be for indoor playgrounds for kids. I mean, they had all the really cool physical stuff with the ball pits, and you can climb the walls, and you got the tunnels and all that shit. And then they also had a small section of little mini arcade games, and where you can push buttons and talk to characters and whatnot. And though I don't know if this is completely accurate to what happened, I have a lot of childhood memories of being there with by myself, but also with my siblings. But I never remember my parents being there. So I don't know if that was a weird 90s thing where they dropped me off and went and shopped around the mall and just thought I'd be good in Discovery Zone with the other kids, or what.
Hey guys, remember the 90s whenever you could just be a kid and just not be supervised by a parental figure, and somehow we fucking lived.
Yeah, it was a different time.
Would you say that was your first experience with what you would consider to be kind of like a liminal space, or is there something that you remember early on, not necessarily being there with all the people, but is there a particular thing that you remember seeing from your childhood, or something that you look back on and think to yourself, oh, that constitutes this exactly?
Yeah, when I first discovered the phrase liminal space, it was probably with the majority of people back around COVID, and it really put into perspective for me this weird, eerie, nostalgic, unsettling feeling that I would get in some areas, or remembering certain things. Discovery Zone was definitely one of my earliest ones. I also have this really weird repeating dream that I've had since I was a child. It's probably one of my earliest memories of a mall that in some places is populated by faceless people or mannequins walking around, but I never really look at their faces. Some of the stores are open and have the lights on, but there's no furniture inside. There's a food court. There's a bunch of neon and artificial lighting, and it's a very striking mental image, and it really stuck with me. I would have to say one of the other ones would be seeing my school outside of school hours. Looking down the dark hallways with all the bright, colorful lettering all over the place and shit like that. That's a next level weird feeling.
Yeah, I think my earliest memories, I have 3 that I would consider, before I knew what a liminal space was, looking back on it, it most certainly counts. So my dad used to work at one of the refineries out here. He was a night security watch, and sometimes we would go bring him, food, because he couldn't leave. So sometimes we would just go bring him food during his shift, and it would be between 8 and midnight some nights, on the weekends. And I very vividly remember the building that he worked in, because he was either at a guard shack or he was in one of the main buildings. And when he would work in the main building, he was the only person. There was nobody in there. He was in this, it was like a control room looking area. But this also housed like public restroom stuff and break rooms with vending machines. And I remember I would venture off, like I would go to use the restroom and be like there was like the stalls, and then like right across was the break room area with the vending machines, and there was just nothing there. And it was red brick lined building. Then on the inside it had, that square tile ceiling kind of layout, and then it had some of the bland ass like brown walls and the white floor that had like gray and black speckles all over it. That it's very, like, to me that is a very vivid memory. But I also remember all the dark shadows because they didn't keep all the lights on in some of the areas, they just left them off, so it would be like a singular light but all these dark corridors. And that's something that is very prevalent in liminal spaces, is the fear of the unknown, or just endless dark corners, like because you don't know what's on the other side of that corner, and that kind of appeals to that fear spectrum of it. Because I know we will be talking mostly about, the creepy aspect of it. And there are some comforting aspects, like the warm, memories of, fun spots, but a lot of the liminal space photography or photos or places that I've seen are typically at night, or they're typically in what should be well-lit areas that are just not.
Yeah, it's a really strange thing to see a place that is typically bustling with people and then suddenly completely empty. The lighting thing is something that gets talked about a lot in the liminal space community. They feel like artificial lighting is one of like the big things for like defining liminal photography. However, there are many different kinds of liminal content. Some are outside in very brightly lit, more natural settings. However, there's almost always something uneasy or off about the picture. Like maybe that house isn't sitting quite right on that very artificial looking hill. Whether it's daytime or nighttime, you can encapsulate that feeling, that essence of liminal space.
Yeah, I mean, a prime example about something like that would be our cover art for this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is an actual original photo that Richie has taken himself.
Yeah. So at my day job, I'm out and about, and this just so happened to be to my left on a road. And I immediately got the most unsettling feeling because the fog was rolling in overhead and daybreak was almost there, but not quite. And it's just this playground setup, and it's just in this open grass field with a fence in front of it, and nobody ever goes there. I never see any kids ever, not even during summertime, not even when I'm in that area, mid-morning going into afternoon. There's never any children there, and that really fucks with me, because it should be a place where people are taking their kids or the kids are playing at, and there's nothing there. It's actually extremely unsettling to me, and I pass it every week.
I don't know about you, but when I see places like that, or I find myself in places like that, I always get the strong feeling that gives me goosebumps, literally raises the hair on the back of my neck, that I am not supposed to be there right now.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to be seeing it. I'm not supposed to be, like, it's almost like it doesn't exist unless I am experiencing it, but I'm not supposed to be.
Right. No, I get it. And I think that kind of ties into where this all came from, truly, because as we mentioned, the height of all of this was, during the COVID-19 pandemic. And it started in 2019 on a 4chan message board. It was a thread on X and 4chan. And it was just this photograph of this empty office area, very beige, yellow, shitty lit, for lack of a better term.
Very fluorescent.
Yeah, and it was posted, and they were like, oh, this is like a paranormal themed like thread, and they were just like, post disquieting images that feel off. And this photo kind of was the example. And of course they had photographs underneath it, but what really took off was that an anonymous user left a comment underneath this photograph, which was eventually combined into a meme of its own, where the photograph was sitting above the comment that the anonymous user left.
The user that replied to the post gave this description of the Backrooms.
If you're not careful and you clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the Backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum humbuzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented, empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you.
And from there began an entire internet phenomenon. The Backrooms itself, which we're not going to get like super, super deep into because there's much more about liminal spaces to dive into, but this being the most, I would say, historical, like
Most well-known,
yeah,
for sure.
It's weird to be like, oh, this is historical, and it was like 5 years ago. But I mean, it's true though. Like, it's the most popular meme about this subject that has gone around, and it's, you know, for fuck's sake, it's got its own universe that almost damn near rivals SCP as far as a universe that exists online that anyone can just add lore to.
I love the world building universes. The Backrooms is a great example of it, and I think comparing it to the SCP universe is very on the nose. It seems like something that you would experience as part of the SCP world. It's extremely expansive. They've developed multiple layers that they call like levels. There's like level 0 through whatever, going all the way up there. And each level is unique and different with its liminal vibe. And there are the presence of certain not very nice creatures in some of these areas as well that will trap you, chase you, all sorts of shit. It's very well designed. They have been so in depth with it that it's very easy to get lost reading about any section of that world.
Right. And there's even spin-offs, there's video games, there's short films. One part of it is like the pool rooms. Like, that's a whole other area of the Backrooms that has its own kind of aesthetic, if you will, because like that, which we'll get into later, it carries over into like dreamcore, like dreamscapes, where it's more based around like vaporwave aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just like the creepy stuff that liminal spaces inhabit. It's also vaporwave. It's also... Do you remember those screensavers on your old computer where it was just like a tubular vortex or the endless brick wall maze?
Yeah, I remember the maze, and I remember like something that looked like pipes, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. To touch base on the Backrooms like one more time before we move on. To the point that it has been optioned as a film by A24. Like, that's how big this got. That's how big this phenomenon got, is that fucking A24, who have made some of the best horror movies and some of the best movies in the last 10 years.
A personal favorite of ours.
Yeah. Optioned the Backrooms from its creator, from the guy that wrote and did his own short film, which is available on YouTube. It's the same dude.
That would be Kane Parsons, and he released the Backrooms short films in 2022, I believe.
And yeah, if you want to watch that, if you've never seen it and you want to watch it, you can go to our show notes and there will be a link to that. And honestly, it is some of the most unsettling shit I've seen because it actually delves into analog horror and found footage, which I think is such a cool crossover with this particular thing, which is what we were wanting to originally discuss, as well as like the mental dichotomy of this, where it's either affecting you negatively or positively, but also the fact that it has delved into analog horror and cosmic horror even. There's a couple of ways it leans into both of those. And the analog horror of it has spilled over into things like Skinamarink, like the horror film Skinamarink.
Which to this day, for me, has been one of the scariest movies that I've seen. I know some people will call me a weenie for that, but it is extremely unsettling to the point where I had trouble sleeping for a while after watching it. That one just hit me hard.
Yeah, and I would say that for at least for that film, you need to see it in a specific type of setting, and the best way to watch it to get a full experience is to legitimately watch it with subtitles and watch it with no lights on in the house and with your TV as loud as you can stand it, because there is a lot of like dead space noise happening, but a lot of the dialogue is whispered, and you just have shots of a lot of empty space. And that's why I was saying like it kind of falls into the liminal space category, like within analog horror. But there's a lot more to get into than just the Backrooms, which I would like to cover the film when it does come out eventually.
Oh yes, that's going to be a must. I would really love to touch on the split opinions on whether the presence of creatures or monsters that are very prevalent in like the Backrooms and other liminal horror spaces takes away or adds to liminal media. I reside a little bit more on the side of part of what makes liminal space imagery so gripping for me is the utter absence of any other person or any other living thing in the video or picture. I feel like the second you add a monster, it is actually taking away a little bit from the liminality of it. However, that does not make me appreciate liminal horror that does have stuff like that any less at all.
Now, are you talking about like if you're looking at something and somebody has like third party added like something to the photo as far as like an entity?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm talking about those kinds of things. There is a very famous like liminal space photo that exists that I believe is like hotel. It's like in another country and it's hotel windows and they're very square in uniform in like a courtyard. And in the there's like extremely tiny, you see the shadows of two people. I personally did not know those were people until it was pointed out to me in a completely different liminal space video. It did not take away from the picture at all for me. But I do feel like media where it's like a lot of the video games that we see that are based on liminal spaces have the creatures that chase and run after or kill you. I feel like for me, that takes away from it a little bit.
I can see that. For me, and I've said this about horror, and I've said this about pretty much anything that you could constitute as scary. It's the things that you don't see that actually fuck with you the most. It's kind of how the Blair Witch Project played into your fear of there's something there, because you never see anything.
Mm-hmm.
But the fear that there could be something in the dark watching you is what gets you the most. And I think with liminal spaces, for me, that's what it is as far as the creepy factor. Because when you're in a lit spot and it's like, oh, this is really nostalgic, but fuck, that's a dark doorway. Where does it go? I'm not going in there. Just kind of how you were with the pool rooms, how some of them don't really mess with you, but it's always the dark corridor slide thing that goes into the water, into the depths of darkness that fuck with you.
I cannot handle those. I have a really hard time watching those videos. For anyone who doesn't know, which is probably most of you, I have like thalassophobia and a lot of weird water quirks that are just really, they hit me really hard.
It's wild to know where that actually came from, because when you told me the other day, it was the first time that I actually have ever heard where that started, and it's a little fucking mind-blowing for me, because like one of the biggest things about liminal spaces is it's also in video games, and a lot of people always point to Super Mario 64 as like the game of like having a couple of spots in there that define what liminal space is. And that was the game.
Yep.
It did it to you.
That one did it to me. It's a very early level. For those of you that aren't familiar, Super Mario 64 is the one where you jump into the paintings of the worlds, and there happens to be one of a sunken ship very early in the game. And you can collect red coins around the map, and I remember exploring this map, searching for it. And I was a child. I mean, I was very young. The game was very new, and my dad had just bought My dad had just bought a very large widescreen television, and being my dumb child self, I was sitting extremely close to it. And I remember playing that game and hunting down my red coins, and I had come out of the ship at some point and was swimming around trying to find like my last coin. And I turned my character around, and then swimming straight towards me, straight towards the screen, was that fucking eel. The fucking eel with the teeth in the window. And that, no joke, I peed my pants. It scared the ever-loving shit out of me. And I ran crying into my dad's room. And of course, he made fun of me, which just compounded upon it being awful. So it really, really stuck in my head and created this huge cascading avalanche of weird water phobias. So yes, those are very huge for me. And the imagery itself, even if there is nothing dark, even if it just has a little bit of water of it, just the unease of it being a liminal photo with water is enough to trigger those memories for me.
Yeah, and a lot of the liminal photography does have water in it.
Mhm.
Even the Vaporwave aesthetic. Most of the Vaporwave aesthetics have water in them, even though they are meant to be warm and inviting because it's a lot of blues and reds and pinks
It's
and
very
purples.
soothing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's supposed to give off that 80s kind of shit and then like some 90s stuff too, which it's strange because whenever you see liminal space photography, I think that's why most of us picture any kind of maybe if you're taking a photo and you're trying to create a liminal space photo out of it, you filter it or you edit it to where it looks distorted, where the camera quality is not that great, like when you snap the photo. However, I still believe if you take the photo with a very outdated camera, you'll get a very authentic look to it. But most of the places that we see, they were places that, us as 90s children were the last of the pre-internet generation where we still went outside and we hung out with people face to face and we called from landlines. We didn't have cell phones and shit. We went and did stuff. And mall culture was very big in the late 80s and the early 90s. Like, that was the thing. And just to even see a lot of that now slowly kind of fucking dying. You're kind of seeing these abandoned malls being abandoned in real time as we speak here in 2025.
I do feel like a lot of liminal photography and videography really appeals to people, of our generation, millennials, and even the generation before to a certain extent. A lot of the imagery and the things that you see are from that period of time. On top of that, a lot of images and stuff you see of liminal photography are very... at least the ones I've been exposed to seem to be very American-based. Not a lot of them have structures and architecture that seem to originate in other countries. So it seems very specific, but that could also be, my algorithm or whatever. So that's also a factor. But I feel like it's really people of our generation that this type of imagery really affects, like more so than anybody else.
Also, I should say that, like, just because a place is empty doesn't make it a liminal space. Like, example, like, someone's house wouldn't be considered liminal because if you're traversing or you're, like, walking through the son of a bitch all the time, you see, like, oh, this got to be fixed, or, like, oh, man, the sink is leaky, or, shit like that. However, like, if it's, like, a shared space, like, if you're in a public shared space, like, I don't know, like a bathroom at an airport, or if you're, like, in a hallway, where nobody goes, like it could be like if you go to like the movie theater that we frequent, and there's just the one corridor that goes to like you go down past the box office and you hang the left. There's just this concrete corridor.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Stuff like that, because liminal is also meant to be like a traversal. It's not something that we always can define as like, oh, it's just this empty room. No, it could be a fucking hallway. It could be literally a door space. Like that's what it is. It's a transitional period. And that's also what kind of speaks to the psychology of all of this stuff, because it's emotional. Like liminal space can also be very emotional. It can be thought of as a transitionary period. Like if you're about to have a giant life change, like if you're about to get divorced, or if you're moving away, or if you lose a loved one, or you're graduating from college, or you're just sick. How many times have we sat there with the flu? Hell, how many of us had COVID during the pandemic when we were already isolated and alone? We couldn't go anywhere, and we were just kind of sat there having that fever dream kind of shit happening to us.
Completely unaware of the passing of time and everything like that. Absolutely. I know exactly what you mean. And you were mentioning houses earlier, and not just like a liminal space, but a state of liminality. And I do think that there is a really good combination of both. So like your house may not be a liminal space, but your house completely devoid of furniture and decorations, and that in-between space of you moving out and the next person moving in absolutely can be a liminal space.
Yeah, and now that you're mentioning that, I would have to go look for it, but I actually have a photograph of my old apartment that I moved out of in 2012. And the photo that I have it's empty. And I took it from the front corner of my living room. And you can see the entirety of the living room and the kitchen and the tile floor and the carpet. And then off to the left, you can see like the bedroom door to my bedroom that was open. And then like the shadow of the bathroom light from the hallway. And to me, it was both depressing and happy at the same time because like I knew that I was eventually going to like go somewhere better. Like I had to move back in with my mom at the time, but I knew that like it was only temporary. But seeing where I was living, what I used to inhabit, that was the depressing part. Seeing what used to be there and knowing that like this isn't mine anymore. You know, that's I think that is like the mental aspect that people don't really talk about. It's not always scary. There are happy memories, but then there's some very sad up the middle of the road kind of feelings about it.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with the local library in the state that I grew up in closing down, where I spent a lot of time in that library as a kid. It was a very safe, comfortable, welcoming place for me. And they decided to build and decorate a new library, which is great. And that space is fantastic. But going into the library on its last days before it closed and seeing it in that state where it's mostly empty, there's nobody in there. The lights in half the building weren't even on because those sections were already emptied out. It's definitely a liminal space and a transitional space, but it is a soothing and comforting and nostalgic one. That one is significantly less creepy in my mind than a lot of other things I've seen. So
there's a lot of ways that it can affect your mental health too, which I've seen the Japanese construct of hikikomori, which
that's
is
seen a huge increase of attention lately.
Right.
Mhm.
And that is, technically speaking, it is a severe form of social withdrawal and extreme isolation, where people will isolate themselves for extended periods of time, sometimes for years even. It's really kind of a loner stereotype. But I've seen this get brought up plenty of times when exploring history on liminal spaces and exploring what happens when people get fixated on it for a while, because there are people out there that will fixate on these images or moments in time. You know, maybe it brings back a not so great memory and then they got a rabbit hole, you know, because sometimes it's, you know, it could be perceived as a danger or an uncertainty, a stressor. And it's these same feelings if you get overwhelmed or distressed or upset about something that's happening and you don't know how to end it or cope with it even, which is kind of wild to think about how most people at the surface level with liminal space photography or just liminal spaces in general typically are seeking it out for, you know, like either the nostalgia or the thrill of it. You know what I mean? They're either looking for the one end of the spectrum, the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I don't think enough people actually talk about that middle ground of fixation and it becoming a very depressing kind of thing, because there are people that fixate on this.
Yeah, I'll admit, since we started researching this for videos, you know, it was already something that I was watching. And I even mentioned this to you, I think, like earlier today, where before I go to bed, I'll pull up these liminal space image compilations and I will watch them and watch them and watch them until I am literally falling asleep with my phone in my hand. There is a huge amount of comfort, and then there's also a huge amount of unease, and I like the middle ground. I really do. It fascinates me. I think it's so interesting, and to the point where I even found out that there's a whole community of people out there that talk to each other about their liminal space dreams, specifically the mallscape one in particular, because they feel like they are sharing this dream space with other people. It's them sharing the same aspects in the dream, the same content, the same imagery. And I guess they all like converse about this like shared experience, which I find absolutely fascinating. But even just watching videos for a few days straight now, or the weeks leading up to this episode, I have felt the weird sort of strain that it puts on you mentally. I found this subject occupying a lot of my mental space and mental energy lately, and I can absolutely see how it could lead to stuff like that. So
yeah, I can too. If I could go on a small tangent here for a minute, and it's strange where, I mean, maybe this is just my experience. You know, maybe somebody else has a different experience with all of this. In doing all of our research for this, I have also been diving into music more. Like I consume music a lot. I probably consume more albums that are new to me in a day than most people do inside of a month. And in doing the research for this, I had been kind of diving into DSVM, depressive black metal, and it typically will revolve around deeper, like lyrical content and also soundscapes. It's very ethereal. Most of the stuff that I listen to anyway is very ethereal sounding, or it's very soundscape driven. But I found those two kind of like clashing. I found like the liminal space spots kind of clashing with the soft synthesizer keyboard driven pieces of some of that music that I listened to, and I found it overlapping. I've had a couple of album covers that I've noticed that I'm like, oh, this is very like, it's becoming too much at once. So I had to kind of back off from it. You know what I'm saying? So it's very much like I said, my experience in that manner might be very unique. But I think that's proof that anybody's brain can take them to some part of, it could be positive, it could be middle road, it could be negative. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call mine very negative. I would just say that, like, I knew that it had potential to be bad, and I chose not to go that way.
Mm-hmm. I'm really interested in hearing if any of our listeners share these experiences, or if they themselves have done these deep dives to, look into, liminality and liminal spaces. And do you have liminal space dreams? And have you experienced this weird, unsettling, nostalgic feeling? Like, I really, really am very interested in hearing what other people have to say about this as well.
Yeah, and there's some good reading out there too. Van Gennep, who coined the term liminality, actually published this in his 1909 Rites to Passage. It's a work of his, and it basically explores and develops the concept of liminality in the context of rites and small-scale societies. It's a good read. I highly suggest picking that up. We also, there was a couple of books that we were kind of looking into getting, because it's also liminal in the sense of like literary, like liminal spacing, like in the way that the book is actually physically structured.
Yes, in particular, one book called House of Leaves. It's a novel by Mark Z. Danielewski. I was describing this book to Richie as best as I could. It's liminal as hell. It also completely changes the idea of what a book can be and what a book can do. And I don't know how to describe it too much without completely just like ruining it or telling you how it works or anything like that. But I highly, highly, highly recommend. This book is not for the weak, by the way. It is not, I would say, super easy to get through, but it is 10,000% worth it. And I think this is a book worthy of collection and admiration and appreciation for what it does and how it presents it to the reader.
And for those of you out there that are not of the reading sort, because I do know there are books on tape type of people, but if you would like to watch anything, there are a lot of video essays out there on YouTube that you can check out and get even deeper than we're going now. And I think that even though we all kind of see this stuff differently, why do we seek these out in the first place? And I think it kind of goes back to that shared dream experience you were talking about, because in some weird way, every one of us that talk about this stuff, it's like we are all experiencing some type of like shared memory, even though they're probably not all the same. We all have this reflection of like our childhood, the innocence of that, how things were much simpler. I feel like it is at the end of the day, ultimately a way for us to kind of escape what's happening right now. And even if just for a moment, re-experiencing a simpler time in life when things were good. I think that's what we're doing. Because a lot of people that do discuss this typically discuss the nostalgia portion of it.
That's the biggest part of it for me, honestly.
And I think if there's anything to leave off on for now, because I would love to discuss more of this when we talk about the Backrooms from A24 when it releases, I think, at least in my opinion, the liminal spaces as it is, I think a lot of us try to pull positivity from it rather than scaring the shit out of ourselves, which, I mean, sometimes that's fine, if you want to do that, but
fun even.
Right. But I feel like a lot of us are looking at abandoned Blockbuster videos, abandoned Chuck E. Cheese's, abandoned parks, things that were like, hey, man, I remember picking out a videotape from this section in this Blockbuster video. I remember going down that slide with my best friend.
I remember getting my first Game Boy game from Toys R Us.
Yeah, exactly. I remember punching the Jeffrey the Giraffe stuffed thing that scared the shit out of me in the quarter. Like, you know what I'm talking about? You put the quarter in the fucking car and...
I know exactly what you mean, yes.
Yeah, I turned to the left and a stuffed Jeffrey the giraffe was there and I punched the shit out of it.
I'm pretty sure I like Sparta kicked some kid at a Discovery Zone into a ball pit. So same vibe.
Fuck yeah, Leonidas.
Fuck. It's so good.
That's your new nickname.
Damn. Could be worse.
For past, present, and future episodes of Cult Macabre, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. You can leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can leave us a rating and leave comments on individual episodes on Spotify. And if you're listening to this episode on our YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to the channel, clicking the bell for notifications for future episodes, leaving a like on this video, or leaving a comment down below. Any engagement helps. And if you'd like to follow us at The Cult Macabre on any of our social media platforms, all of this information can be found in our Linktree link in the show notes below.
If you'd like to join us for more of pop culture's dark side, sign the Black Book and join the cult. I'm Lee.
And I'm Richie.
We'll see you next time.